Hey guys, it's FrazierDanger here. Now today I'm going to be doing a little commentary response video to V. Monroe's response to Stefan Molyneux on why I was wrong about atheism. Now V makes some good points. I agree with a lot of things he said, man, but sometimes I feel like he kind of missed the point of what Stefan was saying or what Stefan was really getting at. I think the broad overarching character of the video was that V was neglecting to understand what or refusing to put into his mind, what perhaps Stefan meant by his dichotomy of right versus left. He makes a few good points throughout the video, but at the same time, he manages to completely ignore what exactly he's getting at with his comparison between the two. So let's see if we can't go over some of this and see what I mean.
So one thing I can't help but notice is that if you are an atheist, overwhelmingly you are for big government.
That's pretty true. That's pretty true.
You are a leftist. You are on the liberal side. Almost 70% of atheists in the US identify as Democrats or lean in that direction. Majority call themselves political liberals, and 1 in 10 atheists say that they are conservatives. Now,
when you throw your statistics, it's the same. You come to the conclusion that atheists support big government, but you never question the statistics. Why is it that indeed so many atheists vote for Democrats instead of voting for right-wing politicians? And the answer is quite simple. I will educate you. When you have one party that's pretty much like, Jesus Christ is here, and now the thing is, like, why atheists support big government? The answer is that no, they probably don't, because by supporting the left, inevitably they will support big government. It's more like a package, when you go to vote, you can't really pick and choose. You can't be like, yeah, I'm right wing, but I don't like guns, or I'm left wing, but I don't really like big government. You just put a stamp on the candidate that you like, and they come with a package of ideas, and one of those packages, I guess, is big government. And atheists just go like, okay, I'm going to go for big government, but at least, right, I'm not going to push creationism into schools.
Okay, see, that's a good point as far as why the reason why, particularly atheists and seculars, the same thing, go for, that one side of the political spectrum is because the right is populated by Christians and conservatives. But you really got to ask yourself, there's got to be a reason why these two things separate themselves into different layers. There's got to be an inherent virtue for Christianity to be set on the conservative spectrum of the political compass. Obviously, in my opinion, that's because of Christianity being the old guard, and conservatism always protects the old guard. It's in the name. But to a certain extent, many of the things in the Christian religion follow straight on with the with liberalism. The need for charity, the need for compassion for your fellow man, and and especially the New Testament. It went on and on and on and on for days about all the good things you should be doing. It also went on about controlling people's lives, but the leftists do that too. You really got to say to yourself, there must be a reason why these two things separate in the way they do. And when you take into account the strife that many religions have gone through, as far as just being able to have their existence. In many ways, it's the same as the dichotomy between atheism and religion itself. The idea that it was illegal, and it still is illegal in some places, to be atheist. That is it's very, very close to each other when you think about it. One Protestant one day gets up and decides he doesn't like the way that this Protestant preacher is going about it. Well, he goes out and starts proselytizing people towards his new beliefs, and that creates a problem between even those two Protestants who themselves have a history of being persecuted for their understanding of the world around them, their belief in God, because of the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church, which the Anglican Church was, an offshoot. It basically was Protestantism for its time. But you understand that people see these things in different ways. And so it's just a natural conclusion for atheists to move away from the political ideology of Christianity, because, of course, the political ideologies along Christianity are going to continue to enforce Christian ideas.
Now, conservatism has its pluses and its minuses. One of the pluses is that it's for smaller government.
See, this is the whole straw man that we're going to see in the entire video.
Is it a straw man? Let's watch that again.
Now, conservatism has its pluses and its minuses. One of the pluses is that it's for smaller government.
You're going to sit there and deny that, and that's understandable. The modern conservative party, the authoritarian conservative party, if you look at it on the political spectrum, yes, they behave in a way that is consistent with growing government rather than shrinking it. Now, they do consistently reduce taxes as much as possible, but they're huge fans of the military-industrial complex because it just makes sense, doesn't it? Given that for some reason, modern conservatism is much more focused on defense than modern liberalism. Modern liberalism is a proselytizer of the world. Modern conservatism is a force for maintaining itself. That's what it does. That's what it's there for. And so I think to a certain extent, it's not a straw man to suggest that conservatism is something that suggests smaller government. It'd be difficult for conservatism. It'd be difficult for conservatism not to suggest smaller government, given that it's conservatism. It's in the name, conservatism, conserving the old way. I'll get into it in a little bit what I think about what conservatism versus liberalism, what good those two things do for society.
Pretty much, like the vibe that I'm getting from him is that he is making if you vote for the right, you are pretty much for dismantling the government.
If you vote for the right in the modern day, you are probably for smaller government. If you're living in America, the right wing is a small government party, no matter what the politicians are doing. And the politicians are simply existing within the format of their space. And it's against their best interest to shrink the power. And so while ideally most conservatives would believe in a small government, you're never going to get that politician who's going to shrink the government except for once in a blue moon or through revolution. And we're seeing that now. We're seeing a political neophyte entering the arena and deciding that he's going to disestablish the government in as many ways as he can, while keeping the ways that he thinks are useful. And of course, that's going to be subjective to him. But the idea of conservatism in the modern day is, generally speaking, smaller government.
He says that right-wingers are for smaller government. These are his words. Isn't George Bush a right-wing candidate?
Yes, he is a right-wing candidate, but he's also he's an establishment conservative. It's not going to benefit him. His daddy was was the head of the CIA for years, and of course the first Bush president. But you can't sit there and expect him to actually go out and do things that are against his best interest. No, it's always in the best interest of people in power to maintain power and grow their power.
Who made the Patriot Act a thing?
But even his dad played lip service to the idea of smaller government, because he continuously referred to the fact that he would have no new taxes. He understood how unpopular taxation was and went out and said no new taxes. Of course, later on he did new taxes, and that's why he only had a one-term presidency, because he didn't do what he promised.
Some conservatives, their version of history starts when Obama got elected. They forget anything that was before Obama.
8 years is a long time, B. 8 years is a long time, especially when most people don't believe that George W. Bush even represented their politics. I mean, there's a reason why post-Bush there was a huge push for a new conservative party. I mean, the Tea Party is one of them. But, of course, all these things, because of the way things are going right now, as you well know, because you've seen it in pretty much every facet of life. The modern political discourse, the modern political arena is rife with people who take good meaning movements and purposefully drag them down in order to corporatize them, in order to basically counter-revolution the counterculture. You know what I mean? They get inside that counterculture and then they make it what they want. Well, it's beginning to really piss some people off, as we've recognized. People aren't exactly cool with it anymore. They were never cool with it, but they were doing it in such a snide little way. But now it's kind of obvious what's been happening. And that's it.
They forget anything that was before Obama.
So, of course, you've got the situation in modern politics where people are forgetting what happened before Obama, because to them it's all the same thing. To them it's all the same stream, man. You never diverged. You never started going into a different direction. It was always the same left, right, left, right. Well, that's going to keep you in a straight direction. No, you have to go right, 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 or left, 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 left to veer off course. And that is why I believe that in certain ways, as long as you're going in the right direction with that, the right and the left work to balance each other. It's a pendulum effect. This is what I was referring to earlier. The political discourse in modern day political arena has not the way I was talking. It exists in a way that liberalism progresses us forward in a certain direction. Conservatism says, okay, we've gone quite a ways in this one direction. Let's back up a minute and think on what we've done. And then it rolls back and it goes to the right, and again, and you take another step forward, and then the conservatives think about that step. They follow up on it, or they don't. And that is how modern politics happens. Now, if you're not going the right direction out of a 360-degree area you've got to move, you're going to have a bad time.
Almost 3/4 of atheists say that coercive government redistribution of money to the poor in the form of welfare does much more good than harm.
Yeah, I also believe that, and I will explain to you why.
Now, I understand that you have a love for certain aspects of welfare, and yes, certain aspects of welfare are great, but in so many ways, they do more harm than good. You can't deny this. I've seen it with my own eyes. I mean, projects filled to the brim with children who are being raised on the idea that the government will provide for you. Now, that's a bad juju that's bad for the zeitgeist of the time. The new generation zeitgeist, when given to a situation where it looks like the government is the one that's feeding you, are going to rely more heavily on the government. And when you build up enough of these people, you're going to have a situation where many individuals will refuse to even work for themselves. I myself had a friend. His mother was unfortunately a welfare whore. I don't know how else to describe that. She was a person who took welfare and worked for it, worked for the welfare. Didn't do any work, fatter than hell, sat around raising 2 kids on the government money. 3 kids, I'm sorry. And one of them, the oldest one, my friend, said to me that he believes that the government should give him a job if they expect him to work. Think about that. And that is a direct result of the government showing him that that was a possibility. And many people, especially when life gets easy on them because they don't have to do anything, will take exactly that path. That's wrong. And that's why you can't sit there and say that it's a good thing. You say yourself that there are people who take advantage of this situation. But imagine a whole society of people taking advantage of this situation. That's what you're growing. But eventually, it's no longer that they're taking advantage of the situation, but that the government's taking advantage of their reliance on them, as we see in the inner cities.
My nation is like that. I don't live in America. But if you would take away, let's say, welfare, then the poor, they still have a right to vote. And they are all of them, going to vote left-wing. In fact, some of them might even start communist parties. This is how it happened in Soviet Russia, by the way, right? Because the poor feels really oppressed, and they start visualizing themselves as a class. and they start visualizing themselves that they have the same oppression, they unite.
This is a really, really Sargon-like argument. This is almost like the argument that Sargon and Computing Forever got into together. That was a shit show, wasn't it? But what you're bringing up is the idea that you have to implement socialist policies in order to avoid disenfranchising the proletariat. So you're basically incentivizing the proletariat to look at them. Unfortunately, all roads lead to Rome, and you've got this situation where if you give them too much, they're going to get lazy and rely on the government and institute socialism, communism. And then you've got the other dichotomy that if you don't give them the money that they want, the things that they need to have subsistence living, they're going to go to communism or socialism. Do you understand that you're damned if you do, damned if you don't? So what's the fucking point? Well, you got to play this balancing act right in the dead fucking center, and you got to pretend like that's going to work forever. Someone is going to try to expand that cause. Who is trying to expand that cause? Liberals. Conservatives have no interest in giving more to people. But if you can convince them that it was good to give a certain amount to people, they will stay with that certain amount as long as it balances society. Conservatism, at the end of the day, is about societal balance. It is the gyroscopic balance to liberalism's constantly shifting narrative. It really is. Liberalism is the young man going out and participating in all these different fights and adventures and, ooh, look at what I did today. And conservatism is the old man saying, yeah, I remember when you did that. Got our asses kicked. Maybe you ought not to do it. And liberalism says, fuck you, old man, I'm going to try it again. And what do we got? Fascists in the streets again, because the communists wouldn't shut the fuck up.
People like Molyneux and I guess other people are going to say, oh my god, I'm a leftist. I'm a horrible person. I bring forth the destruction of the civilizations.
Well, no. I mean, if they say that, they're retarded. You're right. You're right. It's just that you've got to maintain that balance in a way that does not disenfranchise people.
And what's worse is that they even confuse you with the progressives. It's like, oh, so you're for mass immigration. No. You know, you're for all the other shit. You're for, like, transgender theory and, like, no.
You yourself early on in this video made a point about how everybody is lumped up into the big bucket together because you're taking a package deal. And you're taking this big old bundle of stuff, as you said. Now, my opinion on it is unbundle. You know? Get out of the bundle. But, you know, it is easier to agree with a certain political influence all the way than to argue against it. As
challenging statement. In 2012,
Barack Obama captured 3/4 of the votes among the religiously unaffiliated, and only 23% voted for John McCain.
And this is another issue that progressives are using with Hillary. It's like women did not vote for Hillary. Women voted for Trump. And they say it as if it's Trump's fault, but they never judge it. Okay, why did Barack Obama got so many votes? You know, what?
I can tell you why Barack Obama got so many votes. It's because even the right was disenfranchised at the time. My father, who's an avowed, basically conservative, was in favor of Obama over McCain. McCain was a terrible candidate. But honestly, he was a terrible candidate. He wanted to start a 100-year war just like Hillary did. Go figure. Go figure that the people at the top are looking to do the exact same thing, and that there's really no difference between those two parties when you're talking about political aspirations at the top. They're going to do what's in their best interest, not what's in the best interest of the people. They're on the authoritarian spectrum of the political compass, as you probably will know if you actually look at it according to what they're doing. I don't really believe in the scientific value of the political compass, and it helps a little bit. It's right there. They're at the top of the authoritarian spectrum. They're heading north, and most people are heading south. Most regular people are heading south.
I live next door to a Christian. That Christian can go to church and can worship and can do whatever they like. And they're not compelling me to do anything. They
Wrong. They will try to compel you, given enough power and given enough force. But if I'm being honest, I mean, when all that started, it's probably the liberal thing to do back in the day.
They have their beliefs, I have my beliefs. We shake hands, we exchange cups of sugar in cake emergencies, but they...
See, the thing is, there are Christians like that. I don't disagree. There are Christians that, you're an atheist, they're a Christian, that's fine. Perfectly reasonable. But I grew up with a different kind of Christian, Stephen. Maybe you didn't.
You grew up with Orthodox Christianity. A Christianity that forced shit down your throat. A Christianity that tells you that you can't get up and go to the doctor because, if you take a sonogram or, whatever it's called, it's going to send you to hell or something like that. Or you grew up around a Christianity that specifically at one point owned the means of production. I like that. Christianity used to be the bourgeoisie, but it owned the means of production, and the farmers used to have to pay a tithe and everything else like that, as you discussed. That's the Christianity you grew up around. Stefan grew up around Protestant Christianity. That is what he says later on in another video, if I'm not mistaken, or the same video. He grew up around Protestantism. Protestantism has a very distinct liberal culture. It's what created liberalism. There wouldn't be a liberalism today without Protestantism. It's a necessary function for liberalism to even have existed. And that's the difference between your version of Christianity and his. And that's why you see such a big difference. You saw a truly oppressive Christian force around you, or people that, you saw this. And a lot of people had a much wider variety of experience, especially in America, Canada, Britain. These people all displayed or saw Protestantism working its magic. And so they know that even though these people believe in a ridiculous dogma, that Protestantism has a deep root in liberalism because it had to, because it was the underdog at the time. Just like I'm sure Catholicism, when it had its, back in its day, before it was co-opted by the Roman Empire as a power play, was essentially just a movement to keep itself for religious freedom. And then once it got into power, it got out of that. It's just how things work with any ideology. Any ideology.
On the other hand, the lefties, by constantly running to Big Daddy government to enforce their moral conscience on everyone else, regardless of consequences, regardless of ethics, regardless of voluntarism, regardless of the need to choose, that is essential to virtue, the socialists, by running to Big Daddy government, well, they force me to do lots and lots of things. They take my money, they bury me in regulations, they involve my cash in foreign wars, they do lots of god-awful things. And if I try to follow my own conscience and do what I think is best with my resources, well, they support cats in blue showing up with guns to drag me off to jail because I'm not paying my taxes. So, lefties support things like property tax, and property tax means you never really own anything.
This is why you need to understand that he's not on the right perspective, and what you should be drawing out of is the fact that he's trivializing the difference between right and left. There is an entire XY spectrum that's going on here, and you've got to recognize that what he's actually going at is what you've got to recognize is that the man is sitting there on the liberal the liberal right branch of society. He's in that spectrum. He's on the bottom right of the political spectrum. That's where he is. He's not on the top right of the political spectrum. That's statism. The bottom end of the political spectrum is liberalism. And once you get down far enough, anarcho-capitalist or anarcho-communist, whatever you want to get at.
Lefties support things like property tax, and property tax means you never really own anything in your house. You certainly don't own your house or your condo or whatever.
So, Stephen, what you are saying is that if you're gone on vacation, I can occupy your house. You know the squatter movement in Germany, right? I can just move in with a bunch of friends of mine, and when you come back, now it's my house. It's not yours. You don't own it. That's what you're saying if you're not owning your house.
That's not what he's saying at all. He's saying that the government is taxing you on something that you already own, and that is institutionalized slavery. Because when you're being taxed for something that you already own on a regular basis, you cannot actually own it. You can't disassociate from the government in that regard. What he's saying there, V, is and I think you probably understand this, at least passively, is that you don't own something that the government is taxing you on a regular basis. You can't own that as far as that goes, because in order for you to use it, in order for you to actually be in possession and continue possession, you have to continue paying for it. That's a form of rent. No matter how you cut it, you are renting the land from the government, and that's a problem if you believe that the government doesn't actually give you rights but protects them instead.
Because if you don't pay off the government, they can just come and take it from you. So all you're doing is renting from the government. You never own anything. Christians.
No, that's absolutely stupid. You are paying tax to the government, but you're not renting from the government. See, the difference is that if I would rent you my house, I could come in at any day and say, look, Stephen, it's been a bad month for me. I'm going to need to live in this house because, there's a flood and my old house is now...
I'd like to note that the government can do
The idea that you pay taxes and you don't get anything in return. Let's say one day you leave your house and when you come back, you notice that someone was in and they stole your shit.
V, don't you think that he knows that a police force is probably going to be necessary? I'm not sure how much of an ANCAP he is. He might be a top-end ANCAP and not exactly be a full on the spectrum. You know what I'm saying? But it's obvious to anybody that yes, you want to pay money to the government as far as taxes goes, in order to make sure that you can continue to establish the security forces that protect you from fraud and crime and so on and so forth. The difference is that a lot of the stuff that they're doing is extracurricular activities. I mean, we were sending $400 million a year, I think, to other countries to fund abortion clinics or something. What's the point of that? I mean, you can't even do that in this country. We can do it outside the country? I don't understand.
And this happened to a friend of mine. Now, I don't know how good the police in America is, but apparently, and eventually they can track down your goods and free of charge. Well, it's not free of charge, you're paying taxes, but you don't have to pay extra for the service because this is a service that's provided to you.
Provided to you by force. I want it provided for me. I want it provided for me. And by force sounds okay as far as that goes, because I know that the situation requires some stability. Everybody has to be involved in the social contract. But you can't sit there and go and act like, all forms of taxation are the same. They're not.
I can't sort of help but notice that the Christians will try to convert me by the word and not the sword of the state, whereas the liberals, the lefties, the Democrats, well, they want to use the sword of the state to make me follow their moral agenda.
He really is referring to the last century and a half of Christian theology. In fact, the last 2.5 centuries of Christian activity within the Western world among the Protestant cultures. We just, as a culture, we just don't do that. We haven't done it yet. But given enough time, we will. I mean, the evangelists definitely are a group of people who wouldn't mind having it their way, but they're neo-Protestants. They're not even Protestant anymore. It's a moot word for them. They're just the new religious hierarchy. But I feel like that was cut off in the bud. It was growing, and because of the nature of the society we set up, it was a ideological dead end for them for the most part.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. George Bush did have this. He dismantled the IRS, and instead of getting the usual people, he hired really good orators. People like Stefan Molyneux, who's really good at convincing others, right? Who is a very good talker, very charismatic people. And he used these people to go in to the... You can have the argument And I don't know. I didn't watch statistics. But if I would have to come. The idea that the right doesn't use the sword of the state to enforce the legislation of the state is just absurd. Like,
No. You're right. It does, and it always will. But his right, the spectrum of the political compass that he comes from, will not do this. Generally speaking, they don't do this. This is his right. This is basically the people's right. Honestly. People don't want to be sit there and told what to do. That doesn't make any sense for them. Why would they want to be told how to behave by anybody in the society? If you go too far down the rabbit hole, any one way, yeah, that'll begin to happen. And then counterculture will move it out again and again. His political ideology has not done that in the last 2.5 centuries almost.
Atheists say that they reject irrational authority. They reject unjust and immoral authority. Very well. How about, and just try this, if you know an atheist or know somebody who's agnostic or whatever, and let's just say sword, a tad more intrusive than word. Atheists say that they reject irrational authority. They reject unjust and immoral authority.
That's an interesting point. And I've seen Sargon make this point myself. I've always thought this. I've always thought that people need religion. People will always need religion. It doesn't matter if it's a religion of the state or a religion of the book or the religion of the Sky Daddy or whatever you want to call it today, man. It's always going to be the same thing. People are fundamentally irrational and, generally speaking, refuse to behave in a way that's consistent with how, ideally, we might prefer them to behave.
Very well. How about, and just try this, if you know an atheist or know somebody who's agnostic or whatever, bring to them the basic argument that the government is the initiation of force, that taxation is coercion, and see how they respond.
They'll probably say, yeah, you are coerced to do this because it's necessary for government to exist, for civil defense to exist, for certain services we all enjoy to exist. But you got to understand where he's coming from. You've really got to pick up on that and say, man, maybe certain forms of taxation are fucked up. Maybe we shouldn't be using force to demand that people pay taxes if we're going to then turn around and use that same money that we've just taken from you and do something that's against your religious beliefs. You wouldn't appreciate it if the state came out and took your money and started using it to convert people to Christianity in southern China, yeah. But you also should understand that Christians don't like it when you take money from them and begin using that money to fund abortion clinics outside of the country. I mean, that's a double fuck you. Just like converting people to Christianity outside in China is a double fuck you. That's not their prerogative. That's not something that government has any business doing. They should not be proselytizing people with any religion or ideology. That's not government's job. That's why I'm upset about that. I've just heard about this law that was repealed that said that the government, or rather the media, can't propagandize the American people. We need to reinstate that shit immediately. That's why things have been out of control the last 3 years. It's been out of control before, but right now it's totally out of control.
Do they respond with, wow, never really thought of it that way before?
The really nice talk, with one exception. The reason atheists don't believe in God is not because of what you said, because atheists believe in justice and reason and whatnot. I mean, some might do. The reason atheists don't believe in God is because you can't prove to them that God exists.
That's okay. Later on, he makes a whole statement in either the response video he did to this after the fact, responding to his op-ed, or later on in this video, it was the next video. He's basically saying to his viewers, hey, the government's just a big building too, just like a church. You can prove a church exists, you can prove a building exists, but you can't really prove that the idea exists.
You can't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that your God, your particular God, is the real one and he exists.
And you can't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that your ideology, your particular political bias, is the one that's correct for everybody. I mean, that's fundamentally wrong, and that's, I think, what he as a person, as a political man, as a man who enjoys politics, I think that that's exactly what he's getting at. One side always thinks that the other side is wrong for doing it. Liberals such as yourself or atheists think that Christians are doing things wrong by trying to force their way on people, but then you go out and try to force your way on people. Or not you, maybe somebody else. You know what I'm saying, though. You understand? It's two sides of the same coin, just like with the authoritarian power structure.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's very easy to prove to an atheist, by the way, the state exists. I know the state is real. I know if I don't pay my taxes, I get arrested. Hence, I pay my taxes. Why is the state a thing?
Well,
because if you do
if it's God's will,
no government, the state is required.
If it's God's will that you as an individual die if you're gay, and then men come and enact out that will, what's the difference? A man made both of those sets of rules, so what's the difference?
That is their new deity, the state. Got a problem? Run to the state. Need something solved? Run to the state. Want something done? Run to the state. Feel bad about something? Pass a law.
How can you say that this isn't the case, by the way? And I know you tried to. Yeah, actually, what you say is that the right does the same thing. Of course they do. People believe in the state. But the fact is that the left, as a political arm in America, consistently behaves in this way, where they go out and try to coerce people into behaving as they like. The Christian right does the same thing. The secular right, generally speaking, does not. And even the Christian right has generally a feeling within itself, a distrust of government.
Which is supposed to solve all of these problems, like where the universe came from and how we evolved and so on. Nerve to say, and then atheists have the nerve to say to Christians, well, you just have this magical thing called God, which is supposed to solve all of these problems, like where the universe came from and how we evolved and so on. How ridiculous of you.
Yeah, exactly. How ridiculous of you as a group of people just come in and say, you're fucking stupid for believing this. You think it solves everything. And then they come over and they say, oh, by the way, we got this cool benevolent dictator over here for you. He sat down. We're communists now, and he's going to make all the rules, or, whatever, we're collectivists. And you're just going to have to believe in it. This is a hyperbolic example, clearly. I'm not. But you understand what I'm saying. It's the same fucking thing. It's the same thing. And you got to understand that one group of people is a mass of people with differing ideologies, and the other is a mass of people who want the state to do something. I just think one is more powerful than the other at the end of the day, and one is just destined to go out and fuck with other people, whereas one doesn't have to. And you know which ones those are, I hope.
The problem is that they know exactly what that God wants of me.
It's the same thing with the left's inevitable journey towards a benevolent dictator, or just a dictator in general. They believe that this one person should have all the power, and it's not true communism. It's not true well, that's the end goal of all communism. It's not the end result of all communism. There's one guy at the top who says, do all this. Because it's very hard to control a communist state. It's authoritarian at the end of the day.
For instance, the Christian God, if someone slaps me, I should turn the other cheek. No, again, I'm just going to stop here because the video went long enough.
Yes, it has. My video has gone long enough too at this point.
Christians don't use the power of the state, which is just absurd. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and again, I'll probably make a video where I just pull the quotes out of the Bible, where Jesus is for welfare, where Jesus says that if your harvest is bountiful enough, you should give to other people, because why don't they deserve it, right? There are quotes like that in the Bible, and I can pull them over and over again.
Full circle. Yeah, I appreciate you making your videos, man. I'm a Patreon supporter of yours. I enjoy all of your content. Like anybody, I'm going to disagree with you occasionally. I just wanted to see if I couldn't point out some of the ways that maybe you could have come to an understanding more easily of what Stefan was saying, because I feel like at the end of the day, you were just arguing for the idea of atheism. some of your arguments were balancing arguments, I agree. But sometimes you're just arguing against religion, which I feel like is a silly thing to do. Yes, many religions, and especially many religious ideas, are very foolish when it comes to a liberal society and allowing people to behave in the way they want to. You can't just fuck with people. And that's what the Protestants learned when they had all their divergent beliefs. They believed that, okay, there's so many of us, let's just behave in a way that's consistent with allowing others to behave in the way they want to. Oh, treat others how you want to be treated. And that's a Christian value in and of itself, isn't it? It's actually a value in a lot of places. It's this simple. Christianity, Protestant Christianity, behaved in this model, in my opinion, for the same reason that if you put a bunch of cichlids from Lake Tanganyika in Africa in a small fish aquarium, they will behave in a manner consistent with the idea that, okay, there's not enough room for me to be aggressive for room, so I'm going to maintain a non-aggressive stance towards the rest of these fish. But if you put them in a small, in a large container, and you put only a few in there, they're going to behave in a very territorial manner. Protestantism grew up in the former. Government, by its nature, will never grow up in the latter. They simply will never do that. Wherever government exists in and of itself, it is in a territorial disposition. And so you've got to keep checks on that government situation. You've got to hold it back no matter who's in power at the time. Yes, you need to maintain a situation where taxation is at the lowest possible rate. Yes, you need to maintain a situation where ideological power by one group or another is at the lowest possible rate, because these people will inevitably abuse their power and become the enemy for which they were fighting against. And yes, modern political ideologies that are involved in Christianity today, generally speaking, are actually among the most liberal. That's what I believe, anyway. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you guys think. I'm not going to do too many videos like this. This isn't my main thing. But I watch all of these videos. I watch all of Sargon's videos. I watch most of Computing Forever's videos. I watch some Stefan Molyneux. I actually don't agree with him very much. I don't like all of his opinions. I'm not an ACAP. I'm a centrist. But thanks again. And V, if you see this, buddy, keep making content, man. I love your stuff. I like it more than Sargon's for some unknown reason. Actually, I think I like your material more than Sargon's because your format's different. It's raw. It's unedited. And I like rambling. I don't like scripted material so much. In fact, I like a lot of Sargon's newer material because he's on the new channel. And it comes out so unedited. This is the man saying what he believes, which I think is always preferable to a sheet. I can make the most beautiful paper in the world for an ethics argument. But at the end of the day, that ethics argument is still going to be trash because I've had enough time to sit there and argue with myself, but I haven't had enough time to sit there and argue with others. And so not only is this dialogue with myself happening where I'm convincing myself of my own ideas, but it becomes harder for other people to argue against my ideas because you have to take on so much. That's why when two people are having a conversation, it's always much easier to take that point, and rather than letting him run to the finish, which is why I hate people who don't let you talk, you got to give everybody a turn to say something. If you let that person run to the finish, you're going to have a hard time getting them back over here to the beginning of the conversation. You lose so many points along the way that could have just been like, oh, well, maybe I should go this way instead of that way. You understand? It's a thing. You've got to maintain that middle ground. You've got to maintain the middle ground just so you can have a conversation.